Well, hello there, and welcome back to St. Thomas Aquinas for Everyone. I'm Dave Palmer, and we are now in the second half of the Summa Theologia, so congratulations, especially if you have watched all the videos so far. And what Thomas is going to do now in Secunda Secundae, as he will call it, is go through the theological virtues, and then he'll go through the cardinal virtues. And this takes a pretty good portion of the Summa. We are going to take, as far as videos go, each of the theological virtues one at a time, and that means that this video may be a little bit longer than usual, but hang with it, okay? I'd love you to watch the whole thing. You stay till the end. It's probably only going to be 15 minutes or so, but you'll learn a lot about Thomas's treatment of this important and first of the theological virtues, which of course is faith. Okay, so we'll get right to it, and you'll see first off that we now have ST22, okay? So we're no longer in Prima Secunda, we're in Secunda Secundae, which is the second part of the Summa. We're in question 1, article 1. So again, we are into the third of four main parts of the Summa as I've described before. All right, so Thomas is asking, first of all, what is the object of faith, and is it the first truth? And he is going to say, yes, indeed, it is the first truth. So here's the little image I have of faith, and kind of a scary little image there, but it's kind of cool, isn't it? And we are going to see that Thomas says the object of every cognitive habit includes two things. First, that which is known materially, and is the material object, so to speak, and secondly, that whereby it is known, which is the formal aspect of the object. Okay, so let me put some images up here. This is a woman. Okay, so the material aspect of this woman would be her physical features, that which you could, touch or smell or what have you. Her body, her bones, her flesh, her skin, her hair, that's a material aspect to her. The formal aspect would be her rational soul that you can't see, but it is there, okay? Formal aspect would be dogness, and the material aspect would be the fur and the little paws and the tongue and all that kind of stuff. And finally, rational soul again, but this one's material aspect would be its little baby features and its little soft little skin and its hair and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so you get the idea. But what does this have to do with faith? Well, Thomas, funny you'd ask. Thomas is going to say, accordingly, if we consider in faith the formal aspect of the object, it is nothing else than the first truth. Okay, for the faith of which we are speaking does not assent to anything except because it is revealed by God. So the formal aspect is God and everything associated with God, which is a lot. Hence, the mean on which faith is based is the divine truth. If, however, we consider materially the things to which faith assents, they include not only God, but also many other things, which nevertheless do not come under the assent of faith, except as bearing some relation to God, inasmuch as those certain effects of the divine operation, man is helped on his journey towards the enjoyment of God. And then the enjoyment of God should make you think of beatitude and heaven and our ultimate goal, right? Union with God, perfect knowledge of God. So what are these objects of faith? Well, transubstantiation, the teaching on the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist, that would be one. How about the resurrection, right? These are the kind of things that if you don't believe these, you don't have faith. You don't have supernatural faith, because these are key tenets of the Christian faith. And then also the teaching on angels. To be a Catholic Christian in good standing, you have to believe in angels, right? Because they're all over Scripture, and it's just a truth of our faith, right? So now Thomas asks, we're now in question 2, article 3, whether it is necessary for salvation to believe anything above the natural reason, right? Because you might say, well, this doesn't conform to my natural reason like other things would, like math or biology or chemistry. This is supernatural, so do I have to believe in it in order to be saved? What do you think Thomas is going to say? He's going to, first of all, make a distinction between the different types of souls. And I just want to quickly review, because we've already gone over this. A tulip has what's called a nutritive soul or a vegetative soul. And then we move into an earthworm, which has a sensitive soul. That means it can feel pain. A little bit higher of a creature. Not much, but a little bit. A grizzly bear, of course, a higher creature, sensitive soul, but not rational. Human beings, rational soul. And then, do you remember angels? They do not have souls at all, but they're rational in a sense, but it'd be more accurate to say they are intellectual beings. They're spiritual, but they don't have souls, because a soul always has to be attached to a body, and that's, as we talked about before, right? So do we have to believe things? Well, Thomas is going to say the created rational nature alone is immediately subordinate to God, since other creatures do not attain to the universal, but only to something particular. And this has to do with epistemology, with the way they come to know things. While they partake of the divine goodness, either in being only, like a rock or a brick, or as inanimate things, or also as living and knowing singulars, as plants and animals. Whereas the rational nature, inasmuch as it apprehends the universal notion of good and being, is immediately related to the universal principle of being. This is very important, because he's making a distinction between the different levels of creatures, which we have to understand. That's why we don't treat our dog like we do our kids. We don't treat a plant like we do our dog. Hopefully you treat your dog better than you do a plant, right? Because it's different levels, different degrees. Consequently, the perfection of the rational creature consists not only in what belongs to it in respect to its nature, but also in that which it acquires through a supernatural participation in divine goodness. Man's ultimate happiness consists in a supernatural vision of God. That goes back to the first article of the Summa, to which vision man cannot attain unless he is taught by God. Now man acquires a share of this learning, not indeed all at once, but by little, according to the mode of his nature, and everyone who learns thus must needs believe in order that he may acquire science in a perfect degree. Okay, many people would say, well, that's crazy. Why, if I'm created a certain way and my reason can't get there, but God forces me to believe in things to be saved? Well, that's what Thomas is saying, is that because of our nature, and grace perfects nature, grace elevates our nature, when something is proposed to us as a matter of faith, we have to believe it in order to be saved, okay? It's not my rule, it's Thomas's rule. Okay, whether faith is the first of the virtues. Now we know that the three theological virtues are infused: faith, hope, and charity. Is faith the first of them? The apostle, remember that same Paul, says in Hebrews that faith is the substance of things to be hoped for. Now the substance of a thing is that which comes first. Therefore, faith is first among the virtues. One thing can precede another in two ways. First, by its very nature. Secondly, by accident. Faith, by its very nature, precedes all the other virtues. For since the end is the principle in matters of action, the theological virtues, the object of which is the last end, must needs precede all the others. Again, the last end must of necessity be present to the intellect before it is present to the will, since the will has no inclination for anything except insofar as it is apprehended by the intellect. Okay, let me give you an example here. From a sensitive appetite standpoint, if you desire a pizza, you first must know that there is a pizza, right? It has to first be in your intellect, which is associated with faith. Now, faith isn't related to the pizza, but the point is, you can't desire something you don't know it exists. So before you can have hope for something, you have to first know it exists, and before you can rest in it with charity, you have to know it exists, right? Hence, as the last end is present in the will by hope and charity, as in the intellect by faith, the first of all the virtues must of necessity be faith, because natural knowledge cannot reach God as the object of heavenly bliss, which is the aspect under which hope and charity tend towards him. Okay, hope and charity are associated with the will, faith is associated with the intellect. You got to know something before you can desire it and before you can rest in it. Okay, you get it, right? All right, is faith infused into man by God? Infused has to do with, it's God's grace. God gives it to us. We can't work on it. We can't become more faithful. We can't do something in order to get the theological virtue of faith. Like this lady is studying to get her degree or what have you. And, we get exhausted and we study and we do hard work in order to build a house and we merit and all that kind of stuff. The theological virtues are not that way. Two things are requisite for faith. First, that the things which are of faith should be proposed to man. This is necessary in order that man believe anything explicitly. The second thing requisite for faith is the assent of the believer to the things which are proposed to him. Accordingly, As regards the first of these, faith must needs be from God. Okay, God initiates it, because those things which are of faith surpass human reason, hence they do not come to man's knowledge unless God reveal them. To some, indeed, they are revealed by God immediately, as those things which are revealed to the apostles and prophets, while to some they are proposed by God in sending preachers of the faith, according to Romans 10. How shall they preach unless they be sent? Okay? God has to initiate the theological virtues, then we assent to it. So there is an element of our, cooperating, I guess you could say, but God has to propose it. And if God doesn't make the first move, then we're not going to have faith. The Pelagians, heretics, held that this cause was nothing else than man's free will, and consequently they said that the beginning of faith is from ourselves, inasmuch as it is in our power to be ready to assent to things which are of faith, but that the consummation of faith is from God. But this is false, for since man, by assenting to matters of faith, is raised above his nature, this must needs accrue to him from some supernatural principle moving him inwardly, and this is God. Therefore, faith, as regards the assent, which is the chief act of faith, is from God moving man inwardly from grace. So the Pelagians kind of turned it upside down and said, like, we initiate it, and then God, says thank you for initiating that act of faith. I'll go ahead and give you the grace necessary. So they have it inverted, right? Okay, so should heretics be tolerated? We're already in question number 11 in Secunda Secundae, Article 3, so we're kind of moving along pretty quickly here. When you think of heretics, who comes to mind? The famous or infamous heretics, of course, Arius, who really did a lot of damage in the 3rd and 4th century of the church, saying that Jesus was just kind of like below God the Father. He was just like a really good man. And then, of course, Martin Luther, a famous heretic of the 16th century. King Henry VIII, the founder of Anglicanism, was at one time a faithful Catholic. And then Pelagius, who we referred to a second ago with that error of Pelagianism, right? This may surprise you, what Thomas says, okay? And I do not endorse this, and the Catholic Church today certainly does not endorse it, but I'm merely telling you what Thomas said back in the 13th century. With regard to heretics, 2 points must be observed, one on their own side, the other on the side of the Church. On their own side, there is the sin, whereby they deserve not only to be separated from the Church by excommunication, but also to be severed from the world by death. Okay? For it is much graver matter to corrupt the faith which quickens the soul than to forge money which supports temporal life. Wherefore, if forgers of money and other evildoers are forthwith condemned to death by the secular authority, much more reason is there for heretics, as soon as they are convicted of heresy, to not only be excommunicated, but even be put to death. Okay, so his point is, there were things then, like now, that put a person to death. Thomas sees the spiritual matters having to do with salvation of souls as being more important than these more temporal matters. And so if those people can be put to death, he's saying, well, it makes sense that for heresy, which leads people to hell, that should be at least the same punishment. On the part of the Church, however, there is mercy, which looks to the conversion of the wanderer. Therefore, she condemns not at once, but after the first and second admonition, as the apostle directs. After that, if he is yet stubborn, the Church, no longer hoping for his conversion, looks to the salvation of others by excommunicating him and separating him from the Church, and furthermore delivers him to the secular tribunal to be exterminated, therefore, from the world by death. You can see that in medieval times, 13th century, things were very different. So he's saying that the Church is not going to kill somebody, but the Church, after warning a time or two, and then beginning to worry about the damage that he or she could do to other people through his or her heresy, can be handed over to civil authorities and be put to death. Okay, that was the teaching that Thomas proposed back in the 13th century. All right, that does it for Theological Virtue of Faith. There's a whole lot we didn't cover, but I kind of cherry-picked the ones that I thought were most important for you to know, to have a general understanding of what Thomas taught in the Summa on the Theological Virtue of Faith. We will have the Virtue of Hope coming up next video, so hopefully you'll tune in for that. Thank you for watching. God bless you. This has been St. Thomas Aquinas for everyone. I'm Dave Palmer. God bless you.